For this afternoon and tonight, a significant winter storm, including heavy snow with limited drinking.
Hello and welcome to the SnowBrains podcast, where it's my job to interview the most intelligent people in the snow sports industry and pass their fascinating knowledge on to you, our listeners. I'm your host, Miles Clark. I'm a professional free skier, a mountain guide, an Alaska heli ski guide, a UC Berkeley molecular cell biology graduate, the founder and CEO of SnowBrains, and I went speed flying for the first time ever the day of this podcast. Well, I went tandem with my old buddy from the Cal Ski team, Big Z, who's a professional tandem pilot. Human flying sports are completely against my rules, especially since we lost so many of our heroes in Lake Tahoe, California to them. But Z just kept pushing me and telling me how he's done thousands of tandem flights, and he's a big pro, and he does this all the time for a living, and I went for it. It was the craziest thing I've ever done. Speeds over 60 miles an hour, flying 5 feet off the ground at times over a ravine on the Skyway Monte Bianco here in Italy. I loved it. It was terrifying, and I can see how it would be addicting. I'm not going to do it again, but man, it was the best rush I've ever had. Thanks, Italy. This episode of the SnowBrains podcast is brought to you by Club Med. Are you ready for an unforgettable ski getaway that takes care of everything? And I mean everything. Head to one of Club Med's mountain resorts where you can experience the thrill of the slopes without worrying about a thing. With their all-inclusive packages, you'll get all your lift tickets, ski passes, ski and snowboard lessons for all ages and ski levels, delicious meals, exciting apres-ski activities, and even childcare for the kids, all included in the price. So you can focus on what matters most, carving perfect turns and enjoying the breathtaking views. Visit www.clubmed.us or call 1-800-CLUB-MED or call your travel advisor to book your ski escape today. My guest today is Anna DeMonte. Anna is a ski mountaineering athlete who just captured the fastest known time on 15,766-foot Mont Blanc in Chamonix, France. Anna is just a complete mountain badass, and she's fast as Greet's lightning uphill. A 9,000 vertical foot backcountry ski day is normal for her. She's really only been skiing for about 5 years, and she's already skied the Grand Teton in Wyoming, the Hypodermic Needle and Lightning Bolt Chute in Utah. She just got into fastest known times, and I think Mont Blanc was her first try for one, and she got it. She's also going to go for the fastest known time on 14,411 foot Mount Rainier in Washington and 20,320 foot Denali in Alaska this year. Hello, Anna. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. How you doing today?
I'm good. A little sunburned, but very good.
You look sunburned, and I love it. How much vertical did you ski today? And you were in Chamonix, correct? France?
Yes, I'm in Chamonix, Argentière Basin Glacier specifically, and I was out for around 4 hours, and it was 9,100 feet
That's
of
crazy.
uphill. I don't know in meters, get meters down, but
Yeah,
9,100 feet.
I was just in Rogers Pass in British Columbia, and in 4 hours I can do 4,000 vert. So you can over double me. That's impressive. For me, it's great. Well, Anna, today I really want to dive into your FKT on 15,766 foot Mount Blanc, France, because I just don't understand that. And your Whirl experience, WURL, what does that stand for? It's like the Wasatch Ultra Running.
Wasatch Ultimate Ridge Link Up.
There it
That's
is.
kind of a
Thank you.
mouthful.
All right. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about your feet. I want to
Yeah.
talk about your opinion on gatekeeping, and I want to talk about what you do to train and compete at such a high level. But if you don't mind, I would love to start with your life story. If you could do your quick and dirty life story, maybe like in 3 minutes. If it goes over, that's fine. But I would love to hear your life story.
Well, I grew up in Michigan, so not a mountainous state, and wasn't really exposed to mountains until much later in life. But I did grow up an athlete, so I was a swimmer and I played field hockey. And swimming really became like the biggest sport for me. Kind of funny looking back on it now because swimming is extremely boring and you're looking at a black line at the bottom of a pool for many hours at a time. But I just really liked it and I was good at it. You know, people tend to like what they're good at. So
I totally agree with that.
Yes, and so I was winning things and I liked it. And so swimming was like a huge part of my life. And I got recruited to swimming college at the University of Tennessee. And I went to the Olympic trials in 2012 and 2016. I was a backstroker and a butterflyer. And my best event
Wow.
was, yes, my best event was the 200 IM. If any swimmers listen, it's all four strokes. So that was a lot. But honestly, swimming in college was rough. It was 30 to 35 hours a week of training, and it was so cutthroat. And this sport that I really loved, I ended up hating, which is heartbreaking still to think about. I just remember like winning was everything. My scholarship depended on my success.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's heavy.
totally. And it was so bad. It was to the point where like I would hope my teammates did poorly so that I would do better.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that's just like a terrible place to be.
And which school was it? You said
University of Tennessee.
it's right. You said, okay,
And
wow.
I had a lot of recruiting trips, and people always ask me, like, oh, that's such a random place, but Tennessee's really good at swimming. So
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say, well, why Tennessee? But that makes sense.
my parents probably are mad. I didn't go to like an Ivy League or anything, which they were interested. And I was like, no, I want to go to the best swimming school. So Tennessee was, and they're still really good. Shout out to the Tennessee swimming team. Um, but it did leave me kind of with a really bad relationship with sport, myself, my body, competition, like fortunate. So after college, I stopped swimming, and that was like a total slap in the face, going from like all these endorphins, dopamine all the time to nothing. I had a desk job. I worked at IBM in
Ooh,
North Carolina. Yeah, big time.
full
Like,
on.
yeah, like wear a suit to work.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, can you believe that? But that was 2016 is when I graduated. And so I remember being in North Carolina at my desk job and being like, this is not, something isn't working here. Like, this can't be what my life is going to be like forever. But I knew I didn't like swimming anymore. There isn't really a postgraduate swimming if you're not an Olympian path. So I got into bike racing, road bike
Hmm.
racing, and I was pretty good. But then after my first season, I had a spine injury that was really
Whoa.
bad, a herniated disc. Yeah, and a lot of it was like from bending over on the road bike.
Oh, wow.
And in college, we did a lot of Olympic lifting, and I think that made my back kind of weak. And one day I was on a bike training ride before a really big race, road riding, and I just felt like a lightning bolt go down my leg.
Ooh,
And then my foot went numb within like 30 minutes.
no.
Yeah, and like herniated discs, I know a lot of people with them, and they're kind of like annoying for a while, but this was so massively problematic within the matter of 30 minutes. And so I needed surgery. And as
Whoa.
I had surgery, I think 4 or 5 days later, and they messed up the surgery.
Back surgeries do not have good outcomes. They do not have good percentages.
No.
No.
No, but I saw three surgeons and they all said you need this now since your foot's
Hmm.
numb.
Right.
And so I went
Oh,
with the
so
one
the foot stayed numb.
it was numb, yeah.
Okay.
And like the side of the foot, it was my
Hmm.
L5S1 disc,
Hmm.
but they tore something while they were pulling out the disc and it
Oh,
caused
God.
a CSF leak. And I had to lay flat on my back for 6 weeks.
No way.
Yeah. And
Terrible.
so at that time, I was like, okay, I'm not a swimmer anymore. Biking is over. What am I without sport? And those 6 weeks were terrible. And I didn't know if I was going to ever walk again or stand up straight again because of the CSF. It's very painful to stand up. Eventually, when I did walk and start to stand up again, I would just go on these long walks at the state park in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I was just so happy I could just walk.
Wow.
And eventually I was like, I'd like to move somewhere different, like Utah, where there's mountains, and just enjoy movement for fun. And so I moved to Utah in 2020.
Hmm.
Didn't really ski at all. I sucked at
Did you
skiing.
have skiing background?
So I probably like the typical Midwesterner whose family took them to Utah maybe a
Hmm.
couple times. I think under 10 times,
Okay.
maybe 5 or 6 times growing up for a couple days or a week, at
Right.
Christmas time. But when I got to Utah, I was still pizzaing. And I don't know, I was so athletic, but I just like skiing's hard to learn when you're 24. And I remember, I bet you'll find this interesting. I remember I saw someone ski the South Face of Superior.
Oh, yeah.
And I was just like, wow, if I could do that one day. And then like suicide shoot, that looked so incredibly terrifying. And I was nowhere near capable. but it looked amazing. And it was March of 2020, right when COVID hit. It's when I moved, and I was like, that if I could do that, that would be amazing. And I just got obsessed. And all I did was ski like the worst snow. I had never skied powder. I just wanted to ski all the time. And eventually, at the end of that season, like late May, I did ski the South Face. Not
Really?
pretty.
Yeah.
I fell, and I tumbled, but I was just obsessed. Like it's so addicting. It's so beautiful, and it was just different than swimming or competitive cycling. It was like much more spiritual and
Yes.
fun. It was just fun. Like, and I sucked, and so it was like fun to get better. It still is fun to get better. So
Mhm.
that was more than 3 minutes, probably, but
Well, and
yeah.
then it led to this, right? And so I am curious, following that black line and swimming at Tennessee. And I mean, swimming in a pool to me is mentally draining. It's really difficult for me to do. You were able to do that. I wonder how that's translated to you because I think also some of what you do, I know it is more fun. You are in the mountains, it is beautiful, you are outside, but walking in a skin track for 9,000 feet today, I wonder if you see any connections there, like the ability to grind is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, there are a lot of connections. I would say both swimming and just being on the skin track for that long. In some ways, it quiets everything in the world and it forces you to focus on the immediate task at hand, whether it's like doing a flip turn and not hitting your face on the wall or swimming, every little detail is so important. And that was like very therapeutic to me. And I get the same feeling on long ski touring days. It's just quiet, but it's very important that you're coherent and alert. So at the same time, it's quiet. It's also like you need to be very cognizant of your surroundings. And like that kind of like harmony between those two things is super therapeutic to me. And also, I just like to grind. Yeah, I don't know what it is. I like to push my body. It's fun. And uphill definitely makes you push your body.
Well, I think the name of your book will be Flip Turns and Kick Turns, and I only want 12% of the royalties for giving you that title. But I think that your ability to grind that you're referring to is really what helped lead you to this Mont Blanc FKT. And for our
Mhm.
listeners, FKT is fastest known time. And we're going to probably use that a lot on this podcast because that's one thing Anna is exceptionally good at. So you
Yes.
just now in June, you bagged the women's fastest known time on 15,766 foot Mount Blanc in France. It's the highest point in Western Europe. Could you walk us through that day? Because people like me don't understand what it takes, what happens. I want all the details if you're okay with it. Where did you start from? Where did you
Yes.
end? Which route did you take? What was the route like that day? What was the skiing like that day? How much walking versus skiing? Were there lots of people on the route? What was this like? Did you have a support team? Tell us everything. Like, I guess you wake up in the morning and you're going to do an FKT. How does this happen?
Mhm. Yes. So you're right. It's the fastest known ski time.
Ski time.
So
Thank you.
they're skiing and running. There were a lot of men that have done ski times, but I noticed not a lot of women, and I just found that kind of weird. I mean, that's not the only reason. I was just like, I want to do the ski time. So that's downplaying it a little bit, though. The lead up to it was insane, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But on that day, it was actually the second time I had done a full round trip from the church. It starts at the church in the center of town. I'm blanking on the name, but it's like the church in Chamonix. It's beautiful. And from the church, you can see the summit, and it looks so far away. Like I had never been to Chamonix before last year, and when I got here last February, I've heard of Mont. I did not really, and the gravity of the mountain that was standing above this town, it's insane. And so there's this church in the middle of town, and you look up, and that summit is so far away. In fact, for the longest time, Jack and I thought the sub summit was the summit. And eventually we were like, oh no, it's the one further back there. And so you run. I had a harness on. I had one boot in my backpack, one boot on my skis on my back. I ran through the town and then
What
towards
time
the
did you
front.
start?
I started at 4:30 a.m.,
In
I
the
think.
morning. Okay.
I was late, so probably
Uh,
4:45. I'm always
okay.
late. So 4:45 a.m. It was before 5, so
Okay.
sometime around then. It was dark. There was nobody there. There was a photographer at the start, but that was the only person. And I'm not used to being like photographed or filmed. And there weren't even going to be any videographers or photographers until like the day before. I told Rab, my sponsor, that I was doing
Uh-huh.
this. I didn't think it was too big of a deal, but they were like, why didn't you tell anyone? And so they sent a crew. And so I was a little awkward with camera, but started running as fast as I could around 4:45. And it's about 3,000 feet to get to snow line. And
Wow.
you
And so you're
run,
starting around 4,000 feet, right? So
yes,
it's over 11,000 feet of gain. All right, continue.
yes, it's a big situation.
Yeah.
So you run through the town and then eventually you get on a trail and the trail leads you up towards the Mont Blanc tunnel. And from there you're on this kind of like dirt. It was just melted, so it was muddy. It was like kind of slow to be honest. It
Mm,
wasn't the best trail. And then we created like this cut through, not created, but we found like a cut through to the snow line
mm.
that was kind of exposed and rooty and slippery. And so that's all on foot. And then it's about 3,000 feet till you get to snow line. And then that day was actually not the best day, I would say, that
And it's
for
June or so, right? When you did this?
it's June.
Okay.
And I think something I've learned, which we could talk about later, is it's hard to get conditions right for something where you start at 4,000 feet and you end up you go to 15,000. It's like you're going
Yeah.
through multiple zones, and the snow was extremely icy. It was like bulletproof, and so
Ooh,
I skied with ski crampons on the entire time until
wow. And that slows you
until
down.
it was incredibly slow. I almost turned around about 3,000 more feet up onto the
Mm,
glacier just because it was so slow going. And I will say, Jack, my partner, also was doing the FKT that day. And so he started, I think, 30 or 40 minutes behind me. And eventually he passed me
hmm
and we said nothing to each other. It was actually kind of funny. Like, I didn't even notice him. We were both so focused on our individual efforts. But like a few minutes after he passed me, I was like, oh, that was Jack. Oh, great. Go, Jack. But basically, the route takes you onto the Mont Blanc Massif, and it's pretty gnarly. There are big seracs, there are
Yes.
crevasses. I was alone, like never roped to someone else, which was something that I really wanted to do it in that way. And there's a hut. Have you been to the Grand Malay hut?
No, I haven't.
Okay, there's a hut. Oh, I don't know the exact elevation, but it's pretty far into the route after this big crevasse crossing called the Junction. And the hut keepers left water out for us, which was so nice.
That's nice.
Yes. And we had made friends with them over the time we were in Chamonix. Like, I think the first time they thought we were crazy, but eventually we had gone to the hut many times and they put out water for us, which is great. But then this really big crux of the route is this section where you have to walk under a serac that
Mm,
is known to fall. And I think
whoa.
the year before it killed two people.
Jeez.
So that's a whole other topic. But in training for this, like we walked under it many times, and I always was worried it was going to fall on us. I still am worried if I go back, but I sprinted through this section.
Hmm
It takes about 3 or 4 minutes if you're going fast, and then you make a right. You go up to the ridge and then you boot all the way to the summit on a pretty exposed ridge line.
Yeah, what's that like? Is it pretty steep? What's the angle?
It's kind of like undulating.
And are you
So
using ice axe too? Ice axe crampons?
depends on the time of the year. The first
Okay.
time I did it, we had to protect it with I protected it with ice screws.
Oh,
And so
wow.
at that time I was like, there's no way I'm doing this solo
Right.
ever. But on the day of the FKT, I didn't need an ice axe. I just needed crampons.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, and I will say there's this one section, there's these two kind of humps on the ridge. And the one of them is I was scared. Like, you don't want to fall. If you fall, you
Mm.
will die there.
No
And
fall zone.
totally. And I mean, that whole ridge is bad, but that one section, I was definitely a little nervous even starting that morning for that part because I didn't want to screw it up. But after that part, pretty easy to get to the summit after those two little humps on the ridge. I think the ridge is like 1,500 feet. And then the most fun part is you just drop on the north face of Mont Blanc and you get ski directly down. And that was so fun. I knew I was kind of behind schedule that I wanted to be on. I was actually slower to the top than I was 2 weeks prior. I
Ooh,
think very much due to the icy skinning.
right.
And I was kind of like, screw it. Like, I'm just going to see how fast I can go. And I'm going to have a good time. And it's like straight line to space
Yeah,
on
what
these.
was the skiing like? What were the snow like? 'Cause it
Well,
sounds
it's
like it was
very
icy.
variable.
Yeah.
Icy on the up, but by the time we went down, or by the time I skied down, the icy sections had softened a little bit.
Okay. What time do you think you were skiing down?
I think it took me around 5.5 hours to get to the top.
Wow,
So
that's fast. Damn.
it wasn't as fast as I wanted.
Yeah.
No, it was, I guess, what time would that be? I started around 5. It was around 10 something, 10
Okay,
something.
so it's June, so the sun's been on it, and
Yes, and it was sunny. And surprisingly, there was no one on the summit.
that's
There were
nice.
other guided parties that I passed, but
Mhm.
I was basically alone. No one was there supporting me other
People
than
must
that
have thought
water.
you were crazy, right? Just blasting past them by yourself.
Yeah, and I'm like a heavy breather. And
Yeah.
so I was like, like I have no problem like growling at people,
Oh yeah.
especially on that section where there's the ice. Excuse me, like so I did pass someone there, but yeah, people were giving me looks, but they had obviously seen Jack come through earlier, so I think that
Okay.
helped.
Maybe something was up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And both of us are insanely like say that we both gerbil a lot. Like we're very like, get out of the way, roll. Like we're kind
Hmm.
of like fast moving in the mind. But the ski down was the best part. Uh,
Oh, that makes me happy.
it was amazing. Like I'd never skied like skimo skis until a few weeks prior to that.
Okay.
154 length. And I'm
Whoa.
yeah. And I'm 5'8". I don't even know the width. Really small, like skimo race skis. And they're like chopsticks, on
Yeah,
you.
they're I mean, tell our audience, they're super light, they're skinny and short. And
Yeah,
they
and
don't
they're
ski
not.
very well.
They don't ski well at all. And so I was like, whatever. And there's like a little Bergschrunk drop, and like
Ooh.
I'm not a free ride skier. And pair that with the skinny skis. But it's so funny because in that on that day, I was like, I'm sending it over the Bergschrunk drop. Like, and I'm pretty sure I just flopped on the bottom, but the snow on the North Face was great. It skied pretty well, pretty fast. Those skinny skis are tiring though, just because all the bumps, you feel everything. And
Hmm.
you had just walked as fast as you could up this mountain. So I was
Hmm.
hurting a little bit. But then when we got to that icy part that I had walked up earlier, it was like corn. And then that was fun. And
Nice.
I remember like laughing to myself, like, I don't know if this is going to be a great time, but it's like that feeling I got when I skied Superior for the first time. It was like, this is fun and it's fun to try hard. And I don't know if it's going to be perfect. It's not perfect because the up I thought was not great, but
Hmm.
skiing was fun. Like, that's the best part. And so then I crossed all the same stuff that I did, which is a little bit more scary because it was warm and, the crevasses,
Mm.
just the warm June terrain worried me. There were some glide cracks that I skied under.
So you ended up on your up track, or no? I'm misunderstanding. You
Yes,
did.
yes,
Okay. All right. So you're right back
yes.
where you started. Okay. Got it. Continue.
Yeah, essentially you go up the ridge, you drop the north face of Mont Blanc, and then it does meet back up with your up track. And you have to cross back. You have to transition to booting to cross back over the junction
Oh
section.
gosh. So you have to go through Seracs and all that again. And
Yes,
now
like
it's warmer.
skiing. It's warmer. Like
Mhm.
skiing under the Serac is a little better than skinning under it because it's
Yeah.
faster. But
Hmm.
you're just very high stress. Cortisol levels were probably high. They
Yes.
still are high, just talking about it. And like skiing under glide cracks is not a great feeling either. So, to do the whole thing, it's dangerous. And so I was happy when I got back to the dirty, muddy trail. Like that was a
Yes.
relief. And then I put the skis back on my back. I put the boot in my bag and I ran as fast as I could, 3,000 feet down to the town. I actually still have a scar on my back from where the boot was cutting into my back.
But you wouldn't stop.
Yeah, you just don't feel pain when you're like
Mm.
really focused. I mean, I knew it was hurting, but I was like, I'm gonna get back to that church if it kills me. Like,
Yes.
so I ran back and there's a video and I look rough when I get back to the church,
I
but
bet I would. Wow. Intense. And what was your time?
it was 7 hours, 29 minutes.
Wow. Over 11,000 vertical feet and back. And how many miles?
I think around 20. I
Jeez,
can
that's
check.
impressive.
Yes. I actually finished and I was kind of like thinking I want to do it again. That's one of the reasons I'm here in France right now.
Oh,
Um,
okay. So because you know you can do better.
yes, it was 22 miles and 12,500 feet.
Whoa, that's insane. So I did my math wrong. Over 12,000 feet. Well, there might be a little up and down too, right? That adds.
Yes.
So yeah, wow, that is very impressive. And you mentioned earlier that there was some crazy lead up to Mont Blanc.
Yes, I arrived in Chamonix in February of last year, and I
Hmm.
actually had no intention of doing an FKT. I didn't think they were that cool, to be honest. I saw the summit from town, and I was just like, that is sick.
Hmm.
And February through June was just a mix of a ton of volume, like hours and vert in the whole Chamonix Valley area and also in Trevina.
Hmm.
A lot of time was spent in Trevina because we could sleep at altitude
Ah,
and up on the road, I think 7,000 feet. And so there were multiple times when we went to Trevina to try and sleep at altitude because we thought the Mont Blanc window was coming and it didn't come. And we thought that the date for Mont Blanc would be like April or May.
uh-huh.
And essentially, like, there was just so much agony about deciding when to go, when the conditions were good, the fitness levels, the tapering. And from the first time we summited Mont Blanc, where we had to protect the whole ridge with ice screws, we were the only people on the mountain until June. The mountain opened up a ton. There are new challenges. It changed so much, and it was exhausting to try and execute. Also, we're like, I'm not French. We didn't know anybody here. It was really hard to find people to like support us or to give us advice. It's just a lot to even think about now. I'm more proud now knowing how hard all those things were that it was executed as well as it was, but there's a lot of room for improvement. But I'd say I'd never trained that much before. I think it was around, I was averaging like 25,000 feet of vert per week on skis.
Whoa, damn, that's
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah. And that was like a very big fitness uptake in volume. It was a lot.
Absolutely a lot. And so, yeah, you alluded to this, but what are you doing? You're in Chamonix right now in France. What are you
Yes.
doing right now? What are your goals?
Something I really liked about coming over here was just the terrain is difficult. It's challenging. It's steep.
Hmm.
And something I liked about mountains ever since I moved to Utah was just like the continuous pursuit of growth. Like you're never going to be the master of anything.
Hmm.
And Chamonix is so inspiring because there's always someone that's a better skier, that's faster. There's people doing amazing things. The mountains are challenging. And I really liked that about
Hmm.
being here last year. So obviously, I would actually like to do Mont Blanc again. I think
Hmm.
I could go a lot faster. Everyone says that, and it doesn't matter until you do it. But I really believe there's a lot of things I learned.
How much time do you think you could shave?
I think an hour.
Really? So you think you do it 6.5 hours? Wow. Because it
Yes.
with good snow, with better snow.
Yes, I think just like different conditions in general. I
Mm.
think maybe doing it like earlier when there's it's more skiable and there's like 3,000 feet of running.
Hmm.
I think that's really slow. And I
Yep.
think if you could ski down closer to town, that's the move. And we just didn't know that. We picked a pretty crappy day to do it. And I think that alone could be 30 minutes. In general, my fitness is a lot higher now. So, I'm sitting here and I look outside and I see it, the Mont Blanc out there, and I'm just like, oh, I really do want to do it again. So I'm over here to do that. And then just like general training, I like the training out here. And there's a few things like I really want to see some of the north facing lines off the midi.
Oh,
That's
wow.
like, I really like,
Those are
I
scary.
yeah,
Tell our listeners a little bit about how steep they are and what they involve. The Guy de Midi is what she's referring to, which is a
yes,
huge tram that goes to 12,000 feet in Chamonix. It basically goes from 4,000 feet to 12,000 feet really quickly, and all of a sudden you're in very extreme terrain. And the most
yes,
extreme of that terrain may well be that north side of the Guy de
yes.
Midi.
Yes, and I don't take it lightly. Like I don't think I could just waltz onto one of those lines and see them. But the Mallory is one of them that everybody. It's like quite steep. There's rappels. The first part is usually ice, and
Hmm.
you have to ski it very fast, or else you will fall. They're all no fall zones. I think every line on the north side of the
Yep.
midi. But like I really like the technical skiing. I love endurance. I love FKTs. But originally, when I came to Chamonix last year, I really wanted to ski like steep skiing here.
Hmm.
And so most of last year was spent just on Mont Blanc. And so I think this year I'd like to go back to some of those lines that I had in mind, condition dependent, of course. And there's some lines in Argentina that are really cool to me. I like ice climbing. I like the ropes. I like the rappelling. I like the technical aspect of mountaineering. And Chamonix offers so many opportunities to do that. And so I think that's kind of a goal of mine is to like improve a lot of those things. And there's so many lines like the ones on the north side of the Agidimidi that would challenge me and also scare me. So maybe I'd get on them and freak out. But I think you could start with like Call to Plan. That's like my first one that I'd like to do. So
Well, you're definitely, if you like all those things that you mentioned, the rappelling and the steep skiing and the technical, you're in the right place. I don't think there's anywhere more technical or more apt for those skill sets than Chamonix, which is why,
yes.
Chamonix scares me. I spent a month there a long time ago and learned that I was not an extreme skier. I was a free skier, and I have
Ah.
not gone back. I was like, I scared myself, skied, a handful of things, like, wow, this is too much. I'm gonna
Mhm.
take it down a notch. This episode of the SnowBrains podcast is brought to you by Club Med. Calling all skiers and snowboarders, escape to the snowy peaks of Europe, Japan, China, or Canada with Club Med. There are more than 20 all-inclusive mountain resorts offer unparalleled convenience and endless adventures. Explore world-class ski resorts, indulge in authentic gourmet dining, and unwind with lively après-ski activities. Let Club Med take care of everything so you can simply relax and enjoy your ski getaway. Visit www.clubmed.us or call 1-800-CLUB-MED or call your travel advisor to discover your ski paradise. I am curious, how is sponsorship going? Because to me, you are out of this world amazing. I can't believe you have the FKT on Mont Blanc. That's spectacular that you're American. And are you getting paid to ski and climb and do FKTs? How is that side of it going? Because I know how hard that side of the industry is. And I hope that
Mhm.
you're getting some recognition from those brands.
Yeah, Grab is my main sponsor and they do pay me, but it's source of income at all. I'm also on La Sportiva for skis, but payment is minimal. And I've thought about like pursuing that more. Like I don't really I have tried to squeeze brands too much. And I think that's just because I really want to make sure that what I'm doing is something that I want to do for me, that I'm passionate about. I really don't want influence of a brand or pressure that's coming from someone other than me and like my heart, what my heart says I want to do. And I have to say, like Rab, for example, they found me at a Cirque Series race. It's like a running race in Utah. And I had always worn a Rab shell. And I just said, I love Rab. And I met them. I didn't think anything of it skiing then. And like 6 months later, they had reached out to me. And it was started as like a pretty small like ambassador, like they give me gear. And then slowly, as I improved, like they really have supported me and now are like very involved in like interested in what I want to do and have only just been supportive of like in financially and just being very supportive of like what I want and asking me what I'm interested in. So Rab is really like the big one. Love them. But I just want to keep my passion safe, you know? I think it could be easy to just want money from skiing and I have a full-time job, so
What's your real job? That's really challenging to do what you do and have a
yes.
full-time job because I kind of do that at SnowBrains. I ski in the daytime, then I work at night. And I
Hmm.
generally work till I go to bed. I don't go to dinner. I don't do those kind of things because I have to work. That's when I go to
Totally.
work. I could sacrifice my ski time, but I'm not going to do that. So I want to ski
Hmm.
as much as I can and then I work all night. So how do you balance it? And then you're off hours now because you're in Europe, so you're 8 hours ahead.
Yeah.
How do you
Oh,
make all that work?
I totally relate to you. You basically explained it perfectly. I got my degree in data analytics.
Hmm.
So I love data. I love studies. I probably loved swimming because I would like compare my times and see what my forecasted time would be. But I worked at tech companies in a few different roles, but I am in like revenue operations data. It's a real full-time job and it's really challenging to do skiing and have a job. And as I've gotten older, I think like the culture in the United States is everyone wants to be the CEO. And if you're not
Hmm.
making sure it's known that you want to get promoted and you're doing all this, you're not doing enough. And so I do sometimes feel like I live these two different lives that are very different. And sometimes it's like my work colleagues, I love them, but they don't even know what I'm doing outside of work. And so
Hmm.
I do what you do. When I was in the US, I would work from like 7 to 2 or 3, and then I would
In the two or
exercise
three in the afternoon.
afternoon, yeah.
Okay.
And then I would go out like late with a headlamp and ski
I
until
wondered why you were
10.
always skiing it. You and Jack are always skiing at night. I always thought like, what the hell? Like, I guess it's like good
Yeah,
training because then you're not afraid
no.
of skiing at night and you could get through the high mountains in the dark.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's funny you noticed that because that is not by choice. I don't know why he does it. He doesn't go ski at night, but that's why it's nice to be over here because I'll ski in the morning. And then, to be honest with you, I am like sprinting to my computer after I ski. Like, I will go back to the van. I would put like normal clothes on, make sure I look presentable on a Zoom meeting, and I run to my computer.
Hmm.
But it's super close. And then I work here in France till like 10, 11, maybe 12. And
Hmm.
then, and that's it. And it's been really hard because friends are like, why haven't you answered? Or family want to call. And it's like, I'm barely doing both of those things. I haven't figured out the perfect balance yet.
That was my first question when listening to this is because I know from my experience, you have to sacrifice something or some
Hmm.
things, plural. So yeah, what do you think you've had? Because you can't ski all day and then work all night and not let something go. So yeah, what do you think
Yeah.
you've sacrificed?
I think staying in touch with people, and that's
Mm,
like something I do regret and I'd like to change. A lot of friends of mine, are like married now and they have kids like from
mhm,
college. And sometimes it feels weird. Like I'm like the black sheep of the friend group that's like
mhm.
out on these mountains. But I'm just so passionate and I would much rather have something I'm passionate about and be pursuing like a dream or a goal. Like that is so valuable to me that sometimes I'm not as easy to get in touch with, which again, I do feel bad about that. And then yeah, I don't really have a lot of rest days. I think I could do better with that. I think sometimes I don't recover very well, and I've had a lot of people express concerns about that. I sacrifice rest a lot, but just because I'm so excited about what I'm doing. But I think yeah, interpersonal relationships and mental health rest, I probably sacrifice that a little bit.
Well, I think that's really unique. I think it's really interesting because for me, it's the same. I sacrifice social, and I
Hmm.
sacrifice rest. And I was glad to hear you didn't say sleep, because that was something I
Oh.
used to sacrifice in the past, and I've gotten better about.
Oh,
I
really?
really try not to do less than 7.5 hours, even if that cuts
Wow.
into my morning ski, because I just know how bad it is for you to not sleep.
It
So
is.
hopefully you're making sure to get a good amount of sleep because sleep is, I mean, especially now that I have studied it a little bit or read about it a little bit. Sleep is so important for us, and you should read that book, Why We Sleep. It's pretty interesting.
Oh, I'm
It
worried if I read it, I'll think I need to sleep more.
well, you should, but that's why you should read it. That really helped me. So I
Ah,
read that book and was like, all right, because you know how it is. Like you work until 11, and it's a powder day tomorrow, and you need to be up at 6 or earlier and out the door at 7. And so
totally.
the math just isn't there. You go to bed at 11, you're getting up at 6. That's 7 hours, and maybe you toss and turn. Anyway,
Totally.
so it sounds like you might sacrifice a little sleep as well, is what you're alluding to.
A little. I
Yeah,
think a
good.
little.
Okay.
How little sleep were you getting?
Yeah,
That's
6 hours, not all the time, but it was
that's not
happening,
enough.
it was happening a lot. Damn it. It's midnight. I'm still not done with my work, but I gotta go to bed, and it's a 6 a.m. powder day
Totally.
tomorrow. And I'm not gonna miss powder, for the most part, especially as a younger
Mm-mm.
person. And so
Yeah.
now I'm getting a little bit better. Now what I do is I sacrifice the work and not the skiing. So I'll be like, hey, it's 10 o'clock at night. I'm not done with work, and that's fine. I also have a team now, and it used to be just me. So it is, if I didn't do it, it wasn't gonna get done. We're now things can slide a little more, and I have other people to get things done for me or with me, so that's
Yeah.
huge. But I liked your comment about being a black sheep because sometimes you need to hear it from a different person with an outside perspective, and you are, Anna, you are the black sheep. Like you're not ordinary, you're extraordinary. Like you're something different. And I think when we embrace that as a person like you, when someone like you embraces that, can be rocket fuel. And that sounds like you may have already done that. Part
Hmm.
of your black sheep and part of your rocket fuel was this thing called the whirl, the WURL. So
Oh,
what is the
yes.
whirl? Like, what does that mean?
Yes, it's the Wasatch Ultimate Ridge Link Up, and it is a ridge traverse in Salt Lake City, Utah, where I live.
Hmm.
I first heard about it when I first moved to Utah. I heard it was like this massive thing that, you have to be really badass to do. It's a lot of like exposed scrambling. I remember Ben, shout out Ben, took me up the South Ridge of Superior once, very similar to the South Face of Superior story. And I was like gutted. I was so scared. I could not get up the darn thing. And then I saw these people go past us and they were just flying. And I was scared of falling off this ridge. And they said they were training for the world. And very similar to Superior, Ben pointed out like the ridge line. It basically is a U shape around all of Little Cottonwood Canyon. And it's very long, I think 30 some miles, I think 18,000 feet. But
Oh
the
my
main
God.
part is that it's kind of technical. Like there's exposure. And I also had never rock climbed when I moved to Utah. Like I went to the gym and I was climbing up purple, green, yellow holes because I didn't know you had to follow one color. So I was like really new. And I essentially started doing sections of the world as much as possible and slowly got better. Same thing with skiing. Like I was not good. And I just want to highlight that because I remember thinking, I'm so old to be learning this stuff. So many people around here grew up skiing or they grew up climbing. I'm so far behind. But just like the pursuit of improvement, that sounds kind of corporate. But that sounds like something you hear at a sales meeting.
It's
But
on a poster.
yeah. But just little improvements and being okay with not being the best, I think was really good for my ego. Being like, no, actually, you're not very good right now. And so the whirl is like very similar to like the Superior story. It's like I wasn't good at climbing. I was new to Salt Lake City, and to do the whirl, you have to learn about all the mountains in the
Mhm.
city that you're living in now, or that I
Mhm.
live in now. And one of the questions is like the story of the whirl. I did do the entire whirl once, I think in 2022, and it was a disaster. It was like 30 some hours. I don't think a lot of people know about it.
Whoa. Yeah, what
Yeah,
happened?
my dad called search and rescue
Oh
on
no.
me. Yeah,
Because
Ben
you're
was
running around
there.
at night too, then obviously.
Yeah, it was in the middle of the night. My inReach died because I was so slow behind schedule. I wasn't injured or anything, but my parents were from Michigan. They don't know anything about mountains. And so I think when they saw my inReach died and I wasn't answering, they got very worried. And so if
Mhm.
anyone is from Utah or has been to Utah, there was a helicopter I saw circling around Bell's Canyon. And I tried to hide my headlamp because I was so embarrassed because the Wasatch SAR, they have an Instagram and they'll post like, we had a rescue.
Yep.
And it's really embarrassing. And so I was like, that can't be me. And I tried to hide, but they found me and they landed. And I was like, no, I don't need help, please.
That's
And
crazy. I didn't remember this part of the story.
no, I haven't told a lot of people
That's so good.
because it's embarrassing. Well, not now, it's funny, but they were like, oh, well, we have a broken leg over in Big Willow, so we'll leave you. And so they flew away. And
Whoa, that's kind of heavy too. You're like, oh.
yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, you should go to them, not me. I was not in great shape, and I think I finished 30 something hours. It definitely taught me like just because the mountains are right next door, they're right nearby, like the world's a big thing. And same with skiing, like avalanches and things like that. Like there's so much you don't know. And I think that first time doing the whirl, I realized I need to respect the objective more. And just because
Mhm.
I had done some of the sections before, didn't mean I was ready to do the whole thing as fast as I thought.
Mhm.
And, my dad was terrified. To this day, it's
Oh, I
awkward to
bet.
talk about. Yeah. And so I took a couple years and then I did it again much more successfully, not last summer, but the summer before, and in a time that I was more happy with. But it took me a couple years to try it again.
It's massive. I mean, I just can't believe people do that at all. And that you did it under 24 hours, isn't that right? And
Yes,
that's sort
yes.
of like the benchmark goal, is my understanding.
Yeah, that was definitely the goal. That's another one I think I'd like to redo sometime. But that one is like, I don't know if anytime soon. So it's a huge undertaking.
Yeah. What did you say? 36 miles, 18,000 vertical feet?
Yes, yes,
Wow. That's just
yes.
pure pain, just hearing that.
Yeah,
It's
but it's
amazing
like,
and technical. I mean, what people may not understand is that you're basically on a ridge line, and it can be quite sharp ridge line for
mhm.
the entire time. You stay on the ridge line the entire time. Pretty
Yeah,
heavy.
I think that's something about something like the Whirl or Mont Blanc. It's just you have to put everything of yourself into it to be safe, to be successful. And I haven't found something like mountains offer this really unique opportunity to put all of yourself into something. And I
Hmm.
think that's really cool. And there's always something to improve on. So, yeah, it was scary though. I mean, the search and rescue thing, it was like, oh, I hope that never happens again.
I hope that never happens again too.
Yeah.
And what else are you thinking about putting all of yourself into? Do you have any other expeditions planned? I know you mentioned Denali before. Is there just I sniffed something about Ecuador,
Oh,
and
yeah.
what are your goals and what was the plan?
Yeah, I had gone to Ecuador last year with some friends and we skied some of the volcanoes there. That
Hmm.
was really fun. That was kind of like my first out of country expedition type of trip, and I loved it. I really liked having to put logistics together, be somewhere new, navigate terrain that's not familiar to me. So I think that trip really like sparked kind of a passion in me
And that was
for.
like Chimborazo, or what did you do up there? Because those are 20,000
Yes.
foot peaks, I think.
Yeah, yeah. The main goal was to ski the north face of Chimborazo,
Wow.
which had only been done a few times before. So we weren't the first, but we were one of the first.
Hmm.
And it looks a lot like Rainier to me, Chimborazo, but it's
Oh, wow.
like it's a volcano and it's got glaciated terrain or serac. You don't want to ski over the serac kind of thing. So you need to be able to navigate. You need to know crevasse rescue. And I just really enjoy having to know those things and being able to look at a mountain and get up it and down it. Like that is so cool to me. And
Mm.
as far as in the future, Mont Blanc, I'd love to try again for time.
Hmm.
Rainier, I've never done for time. And, you know, I think when I say for time FKTs, it's like very debated whether that's cool or not. You know, a lot of people are like, why?
I think it's cool.
Thank you. Thank you. It's like, I used to think, yeah, it's stupid, but it's really fun to try and go fast. And there's so many different things people can enjoy in mountains. And I remember someone commented on the Salt Lake Tribune article about Mont Blanc, and they were like, such a shame to see people going uphill fast and they're missing out on the beauty of the mountain. I've had a lot of people kind of give that sentiment, you know, speed is sacrificing the joy and the purity of being in the mountains. And I just disagree entirely. And also, like, who is anyone to judge anyone else's goals in the mountains? I think that's just something I've thought about a lot.
And they probably don't quite understand how much time you spend in the mountains. It's not like you're not noticing where you are and what's happening.
Totally.
And people, I don't know, how fast are you really going uphill, right? Not even 10 miles an hour, right? It's not like you're
No,
blazing through in a car and you're missing things. You still see everything. And
totally.
you might be working hard, but for you, that's more normal, right? Like these people, if I went as hard as you went, I wouldn't see much because I'd have tunnel vision and be breathing hard. But for you guys, I think it's more normal. Like you are able to take it all in and move at that pace. And I
Totally.
think it's beautiful.
Thank you. And
Yeah.
I mean, like the amount of times I was on Mont Blanc, for example, like I know exactly where the crevasse was going to be. I like
Hmm.
every little detail. It was a lot like swimming, like the angle at which you put your hand in the water for swimming can
Mm.
change everything. And
Wow.
so, you know, it's very annoying actually because if you make a mistake, like you can go really slow. But I do like the speed on mountains. I don't think it's the only thing I'm interested in. I'd really like to ski some in interesting places. Like I really like to go to Mongolia.
Mm.
But this year, at least, Rainier doing like a fast ski, and these are all ski. I like skiing. I don't want to just walk up. I need to be on skis because that's where I have the most fun. But the big one is definitely Denali, the West Buttress.
So you're thinking
Yeah.
FKT Denali, FKT on Rainier.
Yes,
And
those are
Rainier's in
my two.
Washington State and Denali's in Alaska, just in case people.
Yes, yes, those are two big ones. Denali being, I think, bigger of a goal. May, I have a trip in May, end of May. So
Well, I'm really excited. So part of what you're doing here is de facto training for that.
yes, and I have some partners that are coming to Chamonix that are going to be at Denali with me. And so when they get here, I think we're going to try and like go camp with a tent out there on the glacier and ski
Yeah.
some stuff in Argentina. And I'm really excited for that because I mentioned the black sheep, and I've noticed since I've gotten into mountain sports, and I bet others might relate, when you have a good partner, you don't feel like a black sheep anymore. It's like those are your
Mm.
people. And
Other black sheep.
yes, other black sheep. And like that has been so nice to find in this life.
Hmm.
So,
I appreciate you saying that because that is really true for folks who spend a lot of time in the mountains. When you find somebody else who skis or hikes or climbs or rides bikes or is similar to your level and you really get along with them and they understand you. I mean, I always try to think about that. When you see somebody out on the mountain, kind of no matter who they are, if they're where you are right then skiing, they're probably not that different from you. They probably have a pretty similar history. So there's a lot of really interesting people. And when they get more and more into it, they are more of the black sheep crowd, like yourself. But yeah,
mhm.
like you said, when you can find your tribe of or your flock of black sheep, that is a beautiful thing and really, really special. And some of the closest relationships you've had, I think we've talked on this podcast too, how it'd be interesting to hear what your partner Jack says. But I think military people really have a close bond because their lives depend on each other. And mountain
Mhm.
people can have some of that too, I think, because your lives do depend on each other out there.
Oh, I totally agree. I was telling someone the other day that I have friends that I've had for many years that we're super close with, but I go on one like couple hour ski tour with someone and I almost feel closer with them sometimes. And I don't go on first ski tours with people a lot anymore. Like I have people that I go with regularly, but those are my best friends and they know more about me than anybody just because you're really vulnerable. And like Jack, for example, he and I, one of us is like, I'm scared. And it's just a very vulnerable thing to do with someone. And I just find those relationships to be the most fulfilling.
I agree. Yeah, because I love Brene Brown. If you have not read her book or
Oh,
seen
I
her
know
TED
her.
Talks, yeah. So like that whole idea, which is really true, that there is no courage without vulnerability, right? Because you have to risk something for courage to be real, right? Doing something mundane is not courageous. It's when you've risked something, that you've put something on the line. You could be hurt or killed or harmed, or it could even be emotional. That's vulnerability, and that's where
Mhm.
courage is. So courage and vulnerability are cannot be separated. They are linked forever and always. So I think that having courage and using vulnerability and having vulnerability are such powerful tools. And when you
Mhm.
can do that and you can share that, when you can experience that with people that you love and care about, it just makes you so much closer and leads to some of the best relationships there are. And I think the mountains can be a fulcrum for that to happen. It's one of the places where some of the most powerful relationships are formed. And I feel super grateful for that. And I know that you do too.
Yeah.
So before the show, you sent me a text message and we were going back and forth a little bit talking about blowing up the spot, maybe in reference to social media is the way I inferred it. And then, gatekeeping and all that. And I'm just curious, because we both spend a lot of time in the Wasatch, which seems to have a lot of those vibes. And I'm just curious what your ideology is on that, what you've learned, how you see it.
It's just such a hot topic. And
Hmm.
I think my perspective comes from someone who didn't grow up in Utah or in the mountains. And so when I got into backcountry skiing, like really didn't know a lot of people.
Hmm.
And I had to learn a lot on my own. Like I took a ton of classes from Utah Mountain Adventures.
Good.
And I tried to meet new people and I took my avalanche one, I took my avalanche two. And then there's also like Strava, people record their activities
Hmm.
on Strava. And I just, I find like there's a lot of judgment. I don't know if it's just the Wasatch. I think it's widespread,
It's
but
widespread.
a lot of judgment about having an opinion about what other people do. And I think it bothers me a little bit because nobody owns the mountains. And I found so much joy and growth in the mountains that I would never want to withhold that from someone else. I think what really made me want to talk about this is I find it interesting because being in France or over here in Europe, I felt like there wasn't nearly as much judgment. Like people kind of like live and let live. I don't know if that's the best way to describe it. I don't know if it's, I don't speak French and I'm not on all the forums or anything, but in Utah, it's like people are hiding their maps. They get mad if you share a map. And I don't understand why that's even a thing. And I do still feel like there's a lot of judgment. I guess the story I could tell with this is a couple of years ago, I was skiing the northeast couloir of Lone Peak in Utah,
Hmm.
and I had put a lot of time into deciding what way we were going to approach this line. And you can boot up it or you can top drop it. And there was like a big cliff at the bottom, and our group really discussed, and we felt like it would be better to see the bottom first. And so we booted up it. Maybe that wasn't the best choice, but for us, we decided as a group that was what we were going to do. We skied it. It was a great time, I would say.
Hmm.
But I got this message in my Instagram inbox from someone, and they basically went off on me and saying like I was stupid for doing it that way. All the reasons why it was dangerous, that someone could have skied on top of us, which we did consider, and it was very sharp. And it was from someone who I knew or I had interacted with before.
So it hurts more. Hmm.
Yeah, and so I responded and I tried to take the approach of being like wanting to have a conversation and
Hmm.
say like I understand your points. They're very valid. Like I see why you said this. I see why you suggested this. This is what our thoughts were on approaching it this way. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what our approach was. And the person just never answered.
Hmm.
It just left a really bad taste in my mouth because I am all for being wrong and
Hmm.
hearing feedback. But it felt like this person just was like judging a decision and didn't actually want to have a conversation. And I think that's the same kind of vibe when people are like mad when a line you share a map or something. It's just kind of like a judgmental, sour place to be. And I'm just not like that. And I'm curious what you say about it because you ski in the Wasatch a lot, and obviously you share what you're skiing a lot, and so I'm like hate from people. Not, I don't want to say hate, but judgment.
Well, as you understand, I've gotten similar situations before.
Hmm.
And it's twofold. I feel like it's almost exactly what you said, but I'll just try to can it into bullet points. The person was not there that day with you. They don't know.
Hmm.
The amount of information that is you're getting there in that moment is thousands of information data points. And they're seeing like three of them via
Hmm.
your visual share. So they have no idea what's actually going on. B, they don't actually want to communicate. They want to
Yes,
criticize and they're probably
sure.
jealous and there's something about it that has triggered them. But the reality is that they were not there and they don't want to talk about it. And because I've had that a lot, what I've learned, and I actually learned this from my wife, she's a really great business person, is whenever somebody has a contentious point, it's important to get on the phone. So even somebody that I
Oh.
know that I'm quite close with, I spent a lot of time with, reached out to me recently and had this really sharp criticism similar to what you experienced. And I just said, hey, let's get on the phone. And they came back again with more. And I was like, hey, let's just get on the phone. You can't have true human interactions via text message, or
Totally.
I feel like even worse on like an Instagram message. There's
Oh,
very
the
impersonal
worst.
ways. There's no intonation. There's no way to go back and forth. There's no humanity to it. So I think you need to get on a call with these people. And this person to this day has still not gotten on a call with me. So you experienced, I think, and I'm guessing from my experience that what I have gone through is relatively standard. So I think you went through
Hmm.
a standard experience where the person
Yes.
wasn't there, they don't actually know what's going on. They're making a judgment based on very few data points. And then on top of that, they don't actually want to talk about it. They just want to hurt your feelings and make you feel less and make themselves feel better, which is kind of the point of a put down. And they're
Yeah.
probably jealous because you were out there and they were maybe out of work that day. And that's sort of how I see it. And then once in a while, I don't do this anymore, but in the past, when people say something sharp, I would just say something back like, yeah, I think I may have made a mistake that day, or, that could have been done better. And they
Mm.
almost always write back like, oh, I'm sorry, man. I actually crashed my car that day. I was having a super bad day. Like, I love what you do. Sorry, I was just having a rough minute and, keep rocking. And so, so you
Yeah.
also, I try to think that my dad always says that when someone's mean to you, maybe give them the benefit of the doubt and think maybe they had a rough day and they're not always
Yeah.
like this. But yeah, so I really appreciate you sharing that. I think what you experienced is sort of standard human behavior that we all see
Hmm.
online. And I'm someone who's gotten a lot of negative comments in my life online, but I've never gotten one, not even one in person. So it's
Interesting.
also that
Me neither.
courage. Yeah, exactly. It's that courage behind the computer. It's that ability to reach out and try to hurt someone without you being vulnerable. Like we talked about the courage and the vulnerability. It doesn't take any courage and it doesn't take any vulnerability to lash out online, but it would take those things and both of them at a pretty high level to do it to your face. And that's why
Yeah,
you don't get it to your face because people don't have that courage and they're not willing to be vulnerable in that moment. So
totally.
I really hope that you have more haters tomorrow than you do today because that
Sure.
one measure of success is how many haters you have, whether you like it or not,
Hmm.
because people don't hate on people who aren't doing well. They
Oh.
hate on people who are kicking ass. So if you're getting haters, now I'm like, yes. Like, the meanest you could say is awesome because it means you're doing well. So
That's a good way
I
to look
wish
at
you
it.
more haters, Anna.
Yes, bring the haters, please. I mean, I don't have many, but that's a really good perspective. I really appreciate your perspective, and I actually appreciate like you sharing. Like I think it was one of your cold fusion articles I used to help me ski that, and like I think it's cool to be a steward of the sport, and like I'm happy to share anything I've beta or I'm in the camp that like I'd rather share information and people might like to hide their maps and be mad at share my map of somewhere they like to go, but like I was new. I didn't have anybody in Utah that knew or that I knew that showed me everything. And I think it's good to stir of the sport. But I get why people don't like to share their spots. It's fine. But don't be mad at me if I share what I'm doing. That's kind of my
Well, and
opinion.
if knowledge is power, which it most certainly is, you are adding to a knowledge base, right? You're
Sure.
giving out data points. You are helping people. Like just hearing that from you, saying that, oh, I read your cold fusion article and that helped me go ski that, which is a line on Timpanogos in Utah. That makes me feel awesome. And
Yeah.
I can't picture feeling negative about that. So it's just perspective, maybe. But
That,
I do think that when you look at the world through positive lens, these are just good things. And knowledge is
mhm.
power, and you're contributing to a knowledge base that is going to, in the end, make people better and hopefully give them the
Totally.
information to make decisions that are better than the decisions they might have made without that data. So I think there's a lot, I think
Yes.
there's a lot of value out there. But as we end this podcast, I do want to talk about your feet. So
Oh, great.
you just shared a video about your feet, and I didn't know you went through these challenges, but just for our listeners, I don't know if they could find it or watch it anywhere. It's gruesome, honestly. Like this is a
Yeah.
person who's getting a lot of blisters on her heel area. Looks like you have a
Yes.
big swollen looking heel that you can tell us more about.
Yes.
And you're taking off your boot and the whole back of your sock is just bloody. And then you show the
Yes.
tips of your toes, and it looks like you have like some kind of Raynaud syndrome, which means low circulation.
Oh,
And you can tell us more.
yes.
And it looked like your
Yes.
toes had like rotted off the ends. So I guess
Sorry.
no, I love it. I mean, because I love medicine, so I love all this kind of stuff. So
Mhm.
that's what piqued my curiosity. So what's going on there? Are you better now? How did you solve this? Give us a quick overlay of your poor feet.
Yes, great question. You can find the story of my feet. It's on my Instagram. It's a story highlight.
It's insane.
So it's like a string of gross pictures of my feet and what's wrong with them. I should start an only feet account.
Yes, you should.
But yeah, that'll be like my next job. But no, I've always had trouble with my feet from when I started skiing and swimming. Like you don't wear shoes, so like you
Oh,
never know.
it's
You
like
don't know.
surfing too. It's just great.
Yeah, and so I never knew I had weird feet. And I remember I went to a ski boot fitter once in Utah, and I was like, I'm having trouble with my feet, and they're like, everybody says that. And
Mhm.
now I want to go back to that person to be like, I really do have messed up feet. Because essentially I have really flexible ankles and really high arches. And I have what's called a Haglund's deformity. It sounds so disgusting on both of my heels, and that causes these bone spurs on the back of your heels. And then when you ski, and especially walking uphill, I don't think I would have these problems if I was just downhill skiing. But the heel kind of rubs against the back of the boot, even if it's a great boot, and the irritation gets bigger and like a bursa forms.
Yeah, it looks like you have a heel growing out of your heel, basically. Am I
Yes.
wrong?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
looks like there's another heel
Yeah.
that's on my heel, and it still
Yeah.
looks like that, but it causes major problems. And so I get blisters on the back of my heels, like bloody often.
Mm.
So I guess I'll just break it down. I have the Hadlins on the both heels. I have saddle bone deformities, which is due to high arches. And then the bone on the top of your foot, like there's kind of a bony prominence on the top of your foot. Those are growing up and out. So I get blisters up there.
Oh
And then
God.
on both of those things, it irritates the nerve. So
Yeah, we call that like the
sometimes,
surfer's knot. Yeah, I know what you're
oh,
talking about.
really?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
okay.
like California. Just yeah,
Cali.
yeah,
No, I don't know. Mine's like the swimmer's knot, I guess,
yeah.
because that one formed from dolphin kicking a lot and like having really pointed toes. I guess like
Hmm.
ballerinas get that too.
Hmm. And surfers
Um,
get it from longboarders. They kick the board when they're like paddling. Like so,
oh,
the top of
okay.
their back, what would be the top of your foot is smacking the board. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes,
Hmm.
totally.
Yep.
Yes. Okay, that makes sense. So that, and then I have poor circulation and low blood pressure, this
Mm.
blood condition called factor five Leiden. If anyone's really
Whoa,
interested, it makes my blood more prone to clotting. So like the opposite
that's
of,
bad.
yeah, it's bad. So I got frostbite on the Middle Teton a couple of years ago,
Oof.
and I was not cold all day, and my feet didn't hurt at all. But when I got back to the car, my toes were gray, and I thought that was weird. I
Mm.
didn't know if it was blisters or not, but from that, over the next month, they turned black. I had to
Oof.
go to the burn unit at the U, and so ever
Whoa.
since then, I had to size up in boots. I had to do that to make more room in the toe area for warmth, because now once you get frostbite once, you're way prone to get it again.
Yep.
And I don't want to lose my toes. One of them does look a little different now. It's like kind of flat on the top. Yeah, it's disgusting. So between those frostbite, we have the boots that are too, and the boots that are too big aggravates the heel because the heel is now
Yep.
rubbing more. And so it's been a journey that's not done yet. But what I'm doing to solve it is I posted this. A lot of people said that it helped them. So maybe this will help people who listen too. But
Mhm.
I started wearing these things called Easy Fit ankle sleeves. I think a lot of Nordic skiers wear them. I wear them under my socks now, and it really protects the heel blisters. I wear them every day now. It also kind of helps the larger boot. It like takes up a little bit of space, so it
Mm.
kind of makes the foot a little more secure. So the downhill ski is a little better. But I cut holes in all of my running shoes to let my heels like come out of the shoe. And I also drilled holes in the back pairs of my boots.
No, they're huge holes, right? I mean, these are like
Yeah.
1 inch diameter holes in the back of your ski boots.
Yes,
Yeah.
they're huge. Yeah. So I stood there and Bart Gillespie, yeah. If anybody wants him, I'll give them his contact. But he does a lot of carbon work for bikes and fixing carbon bikes frames, but he also does carbon boots. And he just drew a circle on the back of my boots and started drilling the hole bigger and bigger. And I would have me run around the neighborhood until the hole was big enough that my heels didn't hurt. And once they were, I left them with him and he patched them over with like a more like carbon kind of shell. And I skied them today, the 9,000 foot day, and I had no pain. And so actually it's only been in the last 2 days that I'm like seeing light at the end of the tunnel for the heel problem. But it took drilling holes in my boots. So if anyone has any other ideas, I'd love to know. But I was told like my feet are horrible for skiing, but I don't care because I love skiing so much that I'm gonna make it work. But the sleeves and the holes are what I have going on right now to account for that.
And I hope our listeners really cue into your grit and determination here to think that, somebody with basically mutant feet who is getting massive blisters and bleeding and having all these difficulties is still doing 25,000 vertical foot weeks. This is a person that is not going to be easily stopped. So yeah, you want this person on your team, not against you. Very, very impressive. I think what I like about that story is exactly that. It shows your grit. It shows how focused you are. It shows how people can push through some of the most unimaginable things, because what I've seen in your story the other day was like, I would just stop skiing, but that's not what you did. You're
No, you
skiing
wouldn't.
more. Well,
You
maybe
keep skiing.
I've felt like that too, though. I've had heel issues where I was like, I'm gonna done. This is horrible. And then, you go to the right
Yeah.
boot fitter and they magically fixed it. And for me, it was Bootsy at Teton. I forget what he was like Teton boots in
Okay.
Jackson. He's like, oh, everybody's trying to give you more room. I'm going to give you less. And that locked it
Oh,
in. And that was it.
really?
Yeah. He's like, you have too much
No
room. It's
way.
moving. So I'm going to lock you in and like take up room, put a bunch of, he put like a horseshoe or some other stuff in there and it fixed
Oh, I
it
need to see him.
immediately. Yeah. He's a man. I think he moved to Sun Valley, but amazing person. And so I guess the last real question, Anna, is here at the end of the show is what's next for you and your journey?
Yeah, well, obviously, like this year in the near future, Rainier and Denali, I'd really like to focus on. But I think one other aspect is I volunteer for this organization called Embark Outdoors.
Mm,
And we work with refugee women in Salt Lake and teach them how to rock climb and ski in the
wow.
mountains. Yeah, it's a really cool organization. In the last year, we weren't as active, but I think that's one thing that I will really try to pursue more in the coming years. And a lot of these women have never been in the mountains and they're really scared to like rappel or climb or ski. And it's really cool. They teach me a lot. Basically, I'm a volunteer and I help like guide them. But that's, I think I'd like to make a bigger part of like my mountain story because FKTs and personal objectives are really cool, but they are somewhat selfish. And I think working with Embark has been like so amazing. And I just like to make that a bigger part of my journey. So that's what I hope is next.
Well, that's really great. And I appreciate you sharing that with us. I think that, yeah, if your life flashed before your eyes, the thing that you'd feel more excited and proud of is probably the latter there. If our listeners are interested, how could they help support that organization?
Yes, embarkoutdoors.org, I believe. We definitely are always looking for donations just because we don't have a ton of funding. And so that would be great. And then following the Embark Outdoors Instagram, I think would really help us. Yeah, just something simple like that would be great.
Anna, thank you so much for your time and your energy today and your spirit. I really feel like we got to see a lot more of why you do these things because I think we're all very impressed. And I'm wishing you so much luck on Rainier and Denali. And I'm really excited to follow those journeys as you do them. And as you know, I'm just on the other side of the hill in Italy. So if you ever
Yes,
want to hike uphill super slow or just take lifts, we should try to figure out a ski day before I leave.
definitely.
And
Yes, no, we have to.
yeah. But thanks again. And I hope you have a great rest of the day. I really appreciate you. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you so much for listening to the SnowBrains podcast. If you like this podcast, please share with friends and family, and please make sure to subscribe. To find out more about SnowBrains, please visit us at snowbrains.com. You can also find us on Instagram, Facebook, X, and more. This episode of the SnowBrains podcast is brought to you by Club Med. Ditch the hassle and embrace the freedom of an all-inclusive ski vacation with Club Med. Their resorts in the European Alps and Canada offer the perfect blend of exhilarating skiing, exceptional service, and worry-free pampering. Enjoy having lift tickets, delicious meals, lessons for all ages, and endless apres-ski fun, all included in one price. While the kids are having a blast at the supervised children's clubs, you can focus on mastering your skiing skills and creating unforgettable memories on and off the slopes. Visit www.clubmed.us or call 1-800-CLUB-MED or call your travel advisor to experience skiing without limits. This episode of the SnowBrains podcast was edited by Liam Abbott, music by Chad Crouch, and I'm your host, creator, and director, Miles Clark.